Hello, everyone, and welcome back to my podcast. I hope you're all well. I wasn't planning on doing a podcast, although I was sitting and pondering what experience should I share next, and I came across a video that someone on TikTok had posted, and it triggered memories that I'd forgotten. Probably memories that one of my alters have, or perhaps a few. And this is what happens, souls like myself, those that were in the G.A.T.E program, hence why we're in these programs, because we were sieved out because of our innate abilities, because of our neurodivergent minds, because we are anomalies, right? We are threats to the system, and so we were immediately put through abuse, whether through the hands of those that take us or from our family or just anyone around us. So a lot of us, I can't speak for all of us, but I know a lot of us went through a lot of abuse, and that's because they wanted to keep us weak. They wanted to keep us shut down. They didn't want our light to and our frequency to help us remember who and what we are and our abilities. And so it's complex, guys. Many of you know the purpose of the abuse. It's, again, what I've just mentioned, because, abuse, trauma, it keeps us in that state of fear constantly. Fear controls, and fear, suppresses our abilities. It oppresses us. It can do all sorts, and so this is why a lot of us went through abuse, and all kinds of abuse after the other, after the other, after the other. It was constant. Again, I can't speak for all of us, but for those that are in these programs, because we got sieved out through the these programs, the G.A.T.E program, this is how it's been for us. So they were sieving us out, as well as looking for the gifted and intelligent, and you're looking for the anomalies, right, as the threats that came down here, those with innate abilities that were basically switched on even before we were consciously aware of them, because they were just always there. And it explains a lot of why I had all these crazy experiences that I'm going to get into. So my apologies, guys, for any background noise and if I'm hopping back and forth. But yeah, so I am neurodivergent, and a lot of us are. Those that are in these programs are, whether diagnosed or undiagnosed. I got my diagnosis not too long ago, after being on the waiting list for so long. But anyway, so yeah, there seems to be that as well. Neurodivergent people, well, first of all, we hate authority. We hate being told what to do. We don't like rules and regulations. We don't like order. We struggled in school, because the reason why we struggled in school and it looked like distraction and being naughty is because we knew we weren't easily plugged into the system, the matrix, whatever you want to call it. And we just knew on some level, whether subconsciously or consciously, that something wasn't right. The system wasn't right. All of it. It was just, so we questioned things from an early age, and so because of that, that was questioning things. Already we was a threat to the system, whereas normal, kids just got on with it, right? Kept their head down. They followed orders. They did well in school and got their grades and things like that. And so, yeah, so we were those kids, we felt and sensed something was not right, and by design as well, because we were souls that came down on a mission, and we are the matrix busters, the cycle breakers, we're here to basically do exactly what it is I'm doing right now. And not all of us have platforms. Some of us choose to speak on platforms and share our experiences and share what we know. So my memories with the GATE program are a lot like what you hear with individuals. For my memories were slightly similar but different from the GATE program in the US. You know, all these governments, especially the secret governments and that, the certain factions of the Black Ops, deep state governments, you know, they're all interlinked. All interlinked. And so my memories, very clear memories, was I was taken from my class, and I have memories of being taken from my classroom, my name being called, and a lot of the memories I don't remember what I was taken for. I just knew I was taken. I just always remember my you know, my friends, people in the classroom, you know, always looking at me, and I just remember that look, like as if some of them were like jealous, some of them, sorry about that, guys, some of them were suspicious, some of them were, you know, like what's going on type thing. But on one particular time I got taken out. I remember being in a room, a smallish room. I remember seeing nurses, people in that room that I didn't recognise from the school. We had our own on site school nurses. It wasn't them. And I remember it was like a grey and black box device thing. There were like buttons and switches, and I remember seeing a headset, and they asked me to put on this you know, earphones, sorry. And I remember them saying that I had to listen to the frequencies, and that ever so often there would be these beeps, these high pitched beeps, low pitched beeps, tones. And they said all I had to do was just basically, if I didn't hear anything, to keep my arms down. If I heard a beep or a tone, to put, you know, an arm up. And I remember like I'm saying, if I hear it in the left, put my left arm up. If I hear it in the right, put my right arm up. And I remember saying, because at times I couldn't decide if I was hearing it from the left and the right. It was almost like it was both, but I couldn't pinpoint it. And I remember saying to them, I'm hearing it on both sides. I don't know what to do. And they just kind of, you know, said, that's absolutely fine, just continue. I remember that. And I remember it being very, bearing in mind, you know, I was a kid. I'm trying to think how old I was. Definitely early teens, perhaps 13, 14. And you know, I was a kid, and I remember the energy in the room. It was quite serious. You know, and I remember the energy just coming off the people being quite, yeah, serious a bit. I don't know. It wasn't particularly uh comfortable energy to be in. Anyway, after that, I remember they gave me, well, there was some cards on the desk, and they were trying to remember what they're called, but you know, the I call them like the flashcards, but I can't remember the name. That was it, the Xena cards. And I actually found it really fun because naturally, as a kid, I mean, even now, you know, I just always love to guess things. I don't know if I was testing myself or what, but maybe it's from memory, but I was always testing things like guessing what the next person's going to say, guessing the next scene on a movie that I hadn't seen before, you know, just guessing, you know, a colour of someone's top that they're going to put on, you know, just things like that. So that's interesting. So I remember them holding the cards up, and they were basically asking me what was behind the cards. And I remember getting them all right, which is interesting because that brings me back to another memory when my mum was with my stepdad. And this was my idea. Again, where has this come from? This is obviously before my GATE memories with this test that I'm just sharing with you, because I remember I got a 50p piece coin, heads on one side, tails on the other, and I remember just randomly one day saying to my stepdad, "Oh, I want to play a game. Let's play a game." And he's like, "Okay." I said, I said, "I'm going to toss or flip this coin 50 times, and I'm going to guess correctly which side it lands on." And I remember feeling pretty confident. And I kid you not, guys, I guessed every single one of them. My mum was in the room as well, and I remember him turning to my mum and saying, "How does she know? How does she do that?" And my mum kind of just, excuse me, guys, looked at him and just said, "I don't know." And this was just one example of the many things my mum witnessed and stuff. So you see what I mean? It's just like, where did that idea come from? Perhaps it was memory, because that's what I feel. And so, yeah, I guessed the cards correctly. And then there was another series of cards. And let me know, guys, if you was in the GATE program, if you remember these cards. So they were like animals, but it wasn't like, it was like tiny little dots shaped like animals. And they were merged into one shape. And they were saying to me, "What do you see first? Is it the horse? Is it the elephant? Is it the fox? The butterfly?" And then, of course, I'd tell them what it is I'd see first. And I'm trying to think what else. I definitely remember the pink drinks. I remember it being bubblegum flavour. I mentioned this before. I don't know if it was on my old channel. Many of you know I had my old YouTube channel that I had for 3 years, and I explained why I no longer have that and why I have this one now. But um, it was a strange experience in school, and I got bullied a lot. I never fitted in. Um, Let me know if you felt the same, guys. Never fitted in. I felt like I was different or everyone else was different from me. I just couldn't understand people. I just couldn't relate to them, of course, because of my other experiences, even the ones before my lab memories. Um, a lot of bullying from teachers, a lot of bullying from other kids, a lot of funny looks, a lot of teasing, and yeah, just being targeted by pretty much everyone in my life, except for a few friends here and there that were lovely. But the majority of people around me were horrible. Again, even teachers. I remember my maths teacher bullying me, and this must have been one of my alters that come through, because I was in class, and I wasn't good at maths. I couldn't concentrate. I didn't resonate. I didn't like it. It was boring as hell. I hated school, period. I hated it. And basically one day he humiliated me in front of the whole class, and he said, "I want you to tell me the answer to this equation or sum or something." And I said I didn't know. And I remember him just staring at me in the eyes, and I knew what he was trying to do. And then he slowly walked over towards me, keeping eye contact, and then he kind of slouched down, and he got his arms crossed on the table, on the other end of the table, sorry, of where my desk, sorry, and he just crouched down, and he again kept eye contact, and he was very intimidating. And he says, "I'm going to ask you again, Charlie, what is the answer to this?" In a very serious, intimidating tone and voice. And something just switched within me, and I went from feeling obviously a little bit upset, but this energy in me shifted, and I went from like 0 to 1,000. And I just remember, how old was I? I was about 14, and I just remember I bolted up off the chair, and I flipped the desk, and it was quite a large, heavy desk, and I flipped it with the tips of my fingers. And I kid you not, guys, it went up in the air, and it literally was it was like slow motion as well. It was so strange. And I remember seeing the table, as it went up, it knocked him, because that's how forceful it was, and he went flying near the door, and the table obviously was up in the air. It turned maybe twice, and then it just fell back down on him. And I remember him lying there just looking at me in absolute shock with this table on top of him, and the whole classroom gasped. And then I just flipped out and I went into the toilets pacing, because that wasn't normal for me to act in that way. Um, and I remember looking in the mirror thinking, what have I done? What have I done? Expecting to be expelled, right? Kicked out of school. My mum got called into school, and I never did. I never got into trouble. I remember seeing the head teacher looking at me in a very strange way. But yeah, he didn't expel me. In fact, I went to school the next day. Now, if that was a normal situation with a normal, regular kid, well, the police would be there. There would be reports. There'd be statements. I'd be in trouble. I would most definitely would have been expelled, mean indefinite, right, and not being able to go back, because it turned out I actually broke the teacher's arm as well. So, yeah, as much as I was having a weird time at school, I seemed to get away with a lot of things. It seemed that there was some kind of protection. I would say protection, but yeah, because I knew I got away with a lot of things, I was very naughty. Um, Jumping out of the back of moving school buses, on field trips, just getting up out the middle of class and leaving just to, hang out with friends. So truanting from school. And I never got pulled up on it. I never got in trouble. And so I know without shadow of doubt, obviously, one of those, perhaps the head teacher I don't know, knew about me, and knew I was in these programs, knew that they had to keep a close eye on me, and of course can't expel me and kick me out of school because they can't keep an eye on me. Although there's other ways that they can do that anyway, but it just seemed like I got away with a lot of things, and I guess as well they, were monitoring me, just keeping an eye on me and seeing how I was acting and stuff like that. So it's very interesting. Another thing I mentioned before, I'd often fall asleep in class. I'd often leave the classroom and just hang in the toilet for hours until school finished, or I'd go into the nurse's room, pretend that I was poorly, and she'd let me sleep for hours, for half of the day sometimes. And that was always something that happened even when I was in like preschool, nursery, primary school, and it was always the same theme. And just teachers kind of looking at me in a very peculiar way, which was it was another thing as well. So, things are just, you look back and you think, oh, things was definitely going on, and things are starting to click into place and make sense. In the GATE program, well, the school systems, yes, it's to indoctrinate us and mind control the masses, right? Mind control them while they're young, so they can when they're ready, push them out, and so they can become indoctrinated slaves. But it was much more than that as well. A lot of mind control in that anyway. Like I say, mind controlling us, making us believe in things. Many of you know that our history is, a lot of it is just it's not true, it's backwards. Yeah, and they're just basically programming kids' minds, aren't they? And how to see the world, how to see reality, the reality that they've designed and created. Anyone that thinks outside of that, thinks indifferently, then, of course, then we get labelled all sorts, as many of you know. And many of you know this anyway, but this is for those that don't understand what the GATE program is. There's plenty of information out there, more in depth about the GATE program, who's behind it, its purpose and stuff. And I've just gave bits really, but yeah, I just wanted to really just share my GATE memories. I started getting memories a few years ago, before I realised it was anything to do with the G.A.T.E program. I've only just made the connection. And so these memories are of me being taken from regular school, taken when I'm asleep, and going to what I called psychic school. And I'd been there many and many a times, and I'd see the same faces. And I remember, again, I was young, I was around this like 13, 14, and hugging my friends like, yay, I can't believe it, it's you again. And we were so excited because we were sharing and comparing our psychic abilities, our psionic abilities, things like telepathy, um, levitation, mind control. There were so many abilities that we had, and we were just basically showing each other what we had learned, how we'd progressed with our abilities, and we were so excited. And we had our little backpacks on. It looked like a normal school setting. Um, I absolutely loved it there, but of course, it makes sense that, obviously it was all an agenda, wasn't it? So yeah, in fact, I just come across this video. I'm gonna share it with you, and like I say, my memories, I often, get memory wiped, and as my alters, they have their own memories. And I know I shared it on my old channel, but I don't think I shared it on this channel. And I completely forgot about it. And I watched this video, and I just cried because I was just like, this is what I remember. Before I get into that, I just want to say before I forget. So when we got older, me and my friends in this I called psychic school, it was slightly different. So what they were doing was they were pitting us against each other, and so we used to be really close with some of them, friends, and they started pitting us against one another, and then there was a lot of jealousy, comparing, a lot of tension, and it became quite dangerous. And I just remember, I guess our handlers, they were going around and whispering different things in our ears. They were, you know, golden children there, and children feeling more special than the others, and feeling like they were the chosen ones. And whilst these handlers were basically whispering, and I know this because I did it with me, whispering in our ears, basically saying, um, you are far more powerful than, let's say, Sarah. You're our favourite. We know you can do better. We know it's in you, and stuff like that. And at times I fell for it, and I got caught up in that. But then eventually I was breaking out of that, and I could see what was happening. But there were punishments if we didn't do what we were kind of like manipulated into doing. Of course, while you're manipulated into doing, you don't question anything, but kind of had to go along with it at times to, save myself from harm or punishment. Other things that I remember as well: hooked up to machines, wearing these rubber caps in a room with double-sided mirrors. And I remember seeing, I'm in this room again, hooked up. I've got these wires coming off from this cap, hooked up to this little machine. And I remember looking on the other side of the room through the window. There's people. I guess they were looking at the results of something. And I can't remember. I wish I could remember, guys, what it was. But it was, it was some kind of mental test or telepathy test or something. And I remember there were kids in line waiting for their turn, and again, there were these agents, these handlers speaking to these kids in their ears, saying the same things, oh, you can do this, you're better, a lot of animosity, a lot of tension, a lot of fights amongst, these kids. And it was horrible, and I didn't like the environment. I knew that there was definitely an agenda there, and that they had been lying to us, had been grooming us, from the beginning, telling us, we're special. And they, in the beginning, they treated us really well. They gave us whatever we wanted. There wasn't any restrictions. We were, not really being controlled. It was slowly but surely, then it changed. The atmosphere changed, the energy changed. Our handlers were becoming a lot more, showing their true colours. And anyway, yeah, I'm just trying to remember my other memories. And I remember we was getting our test results, and at times me feeling really like, like mad at myself because I knew I could have done better. And sometimes I didn't give them the results they wanted, and other kids did better than me. But then I was like, no, I can do it, I can do it. So they put me up to the machine again, and then I really put all my energy into it and managed to give them the results they wanted. And I remember feeling really proud of myself. So yeah, let me know, guys. Do you have these memories? And this is a memory I had when I was much older, either like late teens, and it looked like some kind of prison camp. I remember it was in this tall building, and we couldn't escape, and it looked like a prison camp. It looked like a prison. It was all wearing the same, all in one kind of like thin material, um, what you'd see prisoners wear. I remember it being like a pale blue or grey colour. All females though. I don't remember seeing any boys. It was all females that I was with. I remember there were bars on the windows. We got our little, where we'd have our food and stuff in this room. Everything was so cold, minimalistic, concrete cold floors. We was wearing pumps, or some of us were wearing, just bare feet. And there was a lot of tension, animosity, and there was some little groups of girls that really got on. But I was kind of like the lone wolf. I was solo, which reminded me of, my regular school. And our abilities really had, come on. And they're really strong. And these were abilities, like insane abilities. They were chasing me, gonna obviously gang up on me, and they were using their abilities as well. And I remember just running through the wall. I seen a wall and running through it, which is very interesting because my daughter, she doesn't know any of this, but my daughter last year, she told me of a memory where she put it down to a dream, but it was exactly the exact same as what I've just shared with you, but slightly different. She would describe the place, these women, where, kids her age, describing what they were wearing, and she was being chased and cornered, and she just was going through the walls, and so they couldn't get her, they couldn't find her. And she shared other things as well, like pretty identical to my experiences or similar, and I'm just like, wow. And she is in the programs. I'm sure she'll, when she has her own awakening, she'll start questioning things. So I was a very exhausted kid. I was, when I eventually slept, I always woke up feeling exhausted. I never felt like I could sleep. I was exhausted in school, at home. I was just a very, very tired, lethargic kid. Um, I'd have hyperactive moments, of course, at times, but yeah, a lot of the time I was pretty tired all the time. I just felt like I never had any rest. And I remember as well, never feeling alone, feeling like my life was some kind of movie. I just felt like that there were always eyes and ears everywhere watching me. Like I just knew and sensed, even before my memories, that something or someone was could see me and knew what I was thinking and feeling and what I was doing. No, I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't a paranoid kid until until I had to be paranoid at times. But yeah, naturally, no, it's just something that I was aware of. I got on with life. And then I started having experiences where I was seeing these silhouettes of like beings following me, taunting me, chasing me, and around that time as well. So again, when I was like 13, 14, my abilities really came on, and it started off with things like my energy um affecting, light bulbs, light switches would flicker like crazy, especially if I was in a heightened emotional state. Street lights, um as I'm approaching them and under them, it would like I'd just drain the energy, or they'd just flicker and go crazy. Remember the first time it happened, I just didn't think anything. I just thought, oh, that's strange. But then when it kept happening, I was like, yeah, this is weird. Predicting things, premonitions, visions, sensing, knowing what someone was going to say before they said it, picking and feeling people's ailments, picking up on people's thoughts, feelings, ideas, memories, paranormal things, hauntings, seeing spirits, and then of course being visited by UFO, extraterrestrial experiences in the mix as well. It was the whole shabam, it was the whole lot. Of course, asking my peers, friends, do you have these experiences? Of course, no. So it just made me feel like I was crazy. And yeah, and then I was able to manipulate people's minds. I was able to put my own thoughts and feelings, and how did I find out? It was by accident. Um, I just remember having an idea, thinking about it strongly, and it was just the person next to me would say, "Oh, talk about that." Let's perceive it as their own idea or image. And I'd be like, oh, that's so strange. And so I'd do it again, and I would set intentions to make sure that, and this wasn't just a one person, this would be multiple people. I'd set those intentions, I just visualized that in their mind. Um, and 9 times out of 10, we'd have a conversation and they would say exactly what I was thinking, what I was projecting in their mind. So I don't do it now, but because when I realised that I was able to manipulate others around me and kind of get my own way, making people think that their ideas are their own when really it was my ideas and things like that. So yeah, I had an interesting upbringing, hearing things that people couldn't hear. It's just interesting because they say it's typical, very common and typical for those with autism and neurodivergent to hear things such as electricity running in the house and appliances, hearing tones and frequencies and hearing sounds, things that people wouldn't normally hear. I could feel vibrations of people walking, feet, like, I don't know, 10 feet, if not more, away from the house. I remember feeling and then seeing in my mind someone approaching the house. And just before the doorbell went, I remember saying to my mom, oh, there's so and so at the door. And then doorbell would go, how do you know that? I was like, I don't know, I just knew. Like, I knew when the phone was going to ring. Another thing, electric shocks. In fact, my daughter literally woke up yesterday, comes downstairs, touches my handle on my so we've got like patio doors that are attached to the living room that go out into the garden. She touched it and she had this like electric shock and she was like, oh my God. And she kind of let go and I was like, what? She says, I've just had a jolt of electricity. She said, as soon as she touched the handle, it went through her body and down into her leg and her foot. And she said, I think it was her left leg went numb and tingly. And I was just like, oh my God, this is exactly. I mean, I mentioned it when I just did a video podcast with Olivia James. So, people get electric shocks, don't they, every now and again. But yeah, for me, it's like extreme, touching a metal rod and hearing like the shock, the zaps and the static, and I feel it in my body. And I was always again, when oftentimes touching metal, touching car doors, again the same thing. And then with my abilities as well, like it wasn't all the time. It wasn't like I was a kid, running around using all these abilities all the time. It's just something I was aware of, something that I knew I had to keep to myself because everyone else around me wasn't having these abilities and none of my siblings were. So I was leading and living a double life, a bit like now. And it was very lonely because I felt like I had no one to speak to. I could speak to my mum about things because she's got her own psychic abilities, she had her own extraterrestrial experiences. She had memories and dreams of seeing, even as a baby, men in my room, toys all over the place. And I'm a newborn baby, and there's these men just standing around my cot, my crib. I believe they came through portals. What else? Yeah, same thing that I saw with my daughter when she's a newborn baby. They go by the name the Watchers. Tall, very tall, hooded beings of some kind wearing hooded cloaks. So again, having the same experiences as my mom. Some of them, I was a lot more advanced than her, a lot more switched on, and so yeah, all these experiences, and I forget about these things. Clearly, one of my alters is sharing these memories again with me, or watching that video, which I will share with you, triggered all these memories. I could go on, guys, but yeah, like I say, we often have to keep quiet. Just strange things, strange encounters with people and beings, and weird, our energy just affecting things around us. And then these memories have been abducted by the military. A lot of extraterrestrial experiences, abductions, both positive and negative. Yeah, I just feel like I'm waking up again. So it's definitely one of my alters is coming through. Because it's just a very strange feeling. A lot of my alters um we co-front as well. So I'm not fully, or if alters aren't always fully pushed to the back. Sometimes there will be um an alter who's at the front at the time, and then there'll be like, me or another alter, and that will be together co-fronting. And so we share memories and stuff. So it might be strange for some of you that have been watching my stuff and be like, why is she talking like she hasn't shared these experiences before? I don't always remember what I've shared because, again, depending on my alters, because they mess with my memories as well. And so my apologies if I do repeat anything. But I generally do forget, especially when my alters switch. And so, yeah, when I'm explaining and sharing things with you, it may seem like it's like I'm sharing it again for the first time. Yeah, it is very strange, but it's all I've ever known at the same time. It's like like it's like waking up again. So I digress. So yeah, so it's not like, I was running around all the time like, oh, look at me, I can do this, I can do that. It wasn't like that. It's just that I was aware of these abilities with ones that I did trust. Like I could share some things with my mom, and but even though, sometimes she used to look at me in a peculiar, wary way. Sometimes I'd scare her, not deliberately. Like I could see like the confusion and this, the scared energy and just the look on her face and stuff. I remember just always knowing and sensing whenever someone was watching me. And I remember I was out with friends on the front of the house, and I remember my head just moved immediately, and my mum was there, stood at the window, just it looked like she'd been staring at me for a while, but I felt her energy, and I remember clocking eyes with her, and she didn't say anything, she didn't smile, she just was staring at me in a very, very peculiar way. And that's something she often did, with that, giving me that kind of look, which made me feel uncomfortable and like feeling weird around her. So yeah, my abilities, they kind of, I guess they're always there, but they were still a hell of a lot stronger sometimes than others. And I noticed patterns that whenever I had real time live memories of certain experiences, or after I was abducted either by obviously the military or certain beings, that's usually when my abilities are more kind of um, fired up, amped up. Eventually they die down. So I went through periods of just like feeling like I didn't have these abilities, and then they'd just come out. They would just be like spontaneous, like they had a mind of their own. They'd just come out as and when, again, usually around the time that there was activity or was being taken, or again, if I was in a very angry or excitable, in that energy, that's kind of when it would come forward. Some abilities I have, I kind of just, I can just switch off. For instance, I have some mediumship abilities, but I'm not really interested. Occasionally, I got cut off there. Occasionally, I'll purposely switch them on, but I'm not interested. It's a lot as well. Because when you open yourself up, you really open yourself up, and if you're not ready for that, if it's not something you want to do, then you know that's why I don't really open myself up. Sometimes my my abilities are on in the background. Things can come through, things can get through, and so we'll have little experiences and stuff. But um, I guess I just try, and as much as I'm here to not fit in, okay, because I'm not here to play the Matrix, like a lot of us, we're here to dismantle it, we're here to speak against it, highlight it, share our crazy experiences, share the truth through our experiences. There's a part of me that I'm kind of hard on myself, like I kind of want to fit in, and I have tried. I've shrunk myself, and then I'm like, who am I kidding? It's draining. It's exhausting trying to be like I say normal, because they're not normal people, right? These are people that are unconscious, asleep. But I guess every now and again I do shrink myself, because I have to have a break from what I know, what I've experienced, what I see and feel. um, and I'm a very humble person. I think another reason why I shrink myself is because I don't want people feeling threatened, although they do. Doesn't matter how humble you want to be. There are still going to be people that are going to feel threatened, or why her, not me, all this. I've had it all my life, starting from home, and so that was another reason why I shrunk myself. Um, I shrunk my abilities, I suppressed my abilities, forgot who I was many times. putting others' needs before my own, you know, putting them on a pedestal and, you know, like, you know, really like supporting them and like telling them how amazing they are and what they're capable of, whilst I was just, I locked myself away. So I still have a hard time because quite often my energy alone, just my presence, does overshadow and intimidate and outshines others, but not purposely, not deliberately, because that's not what I'm about. I'm here to remind people of how powerful they are and that we're all unique, we're all equal, we all have abilities, whether we recognize them or not. We all have abilities, whether they're dormant or not. We all have them. But I know if I wasn't in these programs, my abilities would be just as strong as I was as when I was a kid. But because I'm in these programs, they harness them, my abilities, and they dumb them down or tweak them down, and they do that by keeping me weak, in pain, docile, health issues. So I've barely got enough energy to function and get out of bed, and that's another way to, you know, hinder my abilities. If that's the right word, and then they can just amp them up, switch them on whenever they want, whenever they please. Quite often, when like all my alters, of course, are me. They have all their own abilities. This is why I have quite a lot of them from memories and stuff. And so, you know, certain alters will have specific abilities, and they'll be switched on when that alter is taken from my consciousness and put in a, you know, a clone. So yeah, they like I say, they are in charge of that. I don't have no control over that. I hear a lot of my lab's assets have said that they have had all their contracts dissolved, or you know, that they're no longer an asset. And I do believe that. But then other people are saying no, that's impossible. You know, you can't just sit there in one day in set intention and say that's it, I don't consent, because we've been manipulated, we've been threatened, or been given ultimatums. There's many ways they've got us to sign these contracts. Of course, we don't have memories. I have memories of not willingly signing contracts. In fact, a lot of my memories are actually when I've been taken and they've, you know, pulled these contracts out, saying no, I will not, absolutely, and I'll never sign them. But of course, they have got me to sign them at some point because I'm in the programs. So probably when I was younger, again, when they were manipulating me, grooming me, getting me to trust them, that I suspect obviously that's when it happened, because I have memories of fighting these beings, using weapons, you know, again taken by the military in the night with these kids, taken to these bases, wearing these you know, combat style I'm struggling, guys, you know, like attire, outfits, giving weapons, and putting us in like both simulated training and also real training against beings, robotic creatures and things like that. So yeah, they obviously had me sign them from a young age. And that's how they get us when we're young, because it's easier to manipulate us, deprogram us, reprogram our minds, compartmentalize our minds, create alters and things like that. And so yeah, I used to think, you know, am I in these programs because I had these abilities from a young age, and I don't know, I triggered the matrix grid, I triggered the systems, and they were like, right, let's see what she's about. Is it because when I was 9 years old, I got visited by an extraterrestrial member of my family? Is that what got me in the programs? But according to my mom, there was always paranormal activity around me. It's just weird things around me. As a baby, as I mentioned earlier, beings in my room, like these men in black type men in my room, agents. So they were onto me as early as being a newborn baby. So they knew who I was. They knew I was obviously one of these illegal aliens. I laugh because you gotta laugh. You know, envoys, extraterrestrial souls here in a human body here on mission. And so, yeah. And then, of course, the G.A.T.E program as well. So I have memories of being involved in many types of missions, different groups, seeing different logos, uniforms. The USA have got their hands on me, MI5. I could go on because a lot of them are interconnected. And the G.A.T.E program wasn't just in the US, it's also everywhere, Australia, the UK, it's all over. And they're using us, they're switching us, swapping us. And of course, they're utilising us. They've used our genetics, our blood, our abilities, our wisdom, our information. They're using every part of us. So we are here, there, and everywhere. In fact, I know some people that I know have sworn that they've bumped into me when I haven't even left the house. So there you go. That's how many clones they've got of me walking around that are either identical, according to what people have said, or very, very similar looking. And I'm like, nope, it's not me. And again, this is this is very common for souls, people like myself that are in these programs. So yeah, they are just spreading us out. They are using whatever they can of us. So yeah. So I just wanted to share that with you. I was going to share it a long time ago, but I never got around to it. But like I say, I've come across that video that I'm going to share with you, and it just triggered these memories. And I was like, you know what? Let's just share my G.A.T.E memories. And I hope I've remembered everything that I wanted to share. But yeah, this video I'm going to share with you now, I was crying because I was like, oh my God, those memories of what I shared with you earlier about going to these psychic schools and everything came back. And then I was just in my head and connecting all the other things in my head, and I was just like, it all makes sense. It all makes sense. You can't make this up. You really can't make this up. It's just insane. It really is. And I guess some of my alters, it's hard for them to wrap their heads around, and we do gaslight ourselves a lot. And my other alters just, they don't gaslight themselves. They know. But some of us do struggle. But anyway, guys, feeling a bit, I don't know, a bit low energy, a bit flat. I will speak to you in a new podcast when I share some more memories. Take care, guys.